Hey dudes, welcome back to another Dragon Ball FighterZ video. Check it out, today we're doing something a little bit different. I want to make a tier list for a brand new player, a player who's never played Dragon Ball FighterZ before, and this tier list is going to be centered around the difficulty of characters, rather than the actual viability of the character. So this tier list isn't what characters are the best or what characters are the worst, rather it's actually what characters are easy to pick up and play with for a brand new player to Dragon Ball FighterZ versus what characters you're going to need to go to training mode and learn a couple things first. Of course, you guys are always welcome in the comments down below in order to give your thoughts on who you think are easy to play characters and which ones are more difficult. These are all characters that you definitely have to know your way around in order to actually be able to utilize. Master Roshi is just one of the most unorthodox characters in all of Dragon Ball FighterZ, and anybody who's played the game and has a lot of experience will tell you he's not an easy character to get down. Even experienced players struggle to use this guy effectively. Fat Boo is just once again one of those really unorthodox characters with combo strings that you really wouldn't expect. But once you actually crack this guy open, you have access to a crazy amount of resets and awesome combos. And Nappa's pretty much the same, but instead he uses his Cybermen to access those crazy combos. The Ginyu Force is an absolute powerhouse, and honestly I'd even go as far as to say it's really underexplored. And I think a really good Ginyu main will actually show you that that might be true. But utilizing the Ginyu Force is no easy task. Beerus shines most of all once you're able to actually utilize his orbs, and if you haven't really gotten used to those orbs, you're not really going to be able to milk this character for all he's worth. Now moving up to the some getting used to tier. These characters do have some type of complexity, but they're not super unorthodox to the point where you're left out in the wind, completely lost as to what to do with these guys. Now keep in mind, this isn't really in any particular order. It's not to say that Super Broly requires more getting used to than say somebody like Hit. It's just all lumped together here. But all of these characters are still a little bit unorthodox, but not as unorthodox as our previous tier. You have a grappler, somebody like Super Broly, who's really going to emphasize throwing out those command grabs. And if you can get used to that kind of playstyle, you'll do really well with him. Janemba has a lot more straightforward tools than somebody like Beerus, but just like Beerus, he's going to want to go ahead and throw out his Hell's Gate attack in order to help extend combos. While the Hell's Gate attack isn't necessarily a necessity for every single one of his combos, it is something you'll see an advanced Janemba player using quite often. And this is precisely why he's in this tier, because once again, he is a lot more straightforward of a character than the more unorthodox characters. He has all the tools you'd come to expect. Frieza is really based on his range, and after the latest patch, he's able to go toe-to-toe and head-to-head in close quarters combat, especially with his golden form, which is something you'll definitely want to be utilizing. But getting used to the speed of his golden form for a brand new player might be a little bit tricky, especially since he has some unorthodox moves as well. Being able to string these things together can be a little confusing for a newer player. Piccolo is just Piccolo. The guy's got a lot of unique tools, and learning to use those together is really going to be what makes this character to shine. So if you're a newer player and you haven't yet gotten used to the gameplay mechanics of Dragon Ball FighterZ, then you're probably going to want to go ahead and take Piccolo to the lab. Somebody like Hit has a whole lot of really fun tools. It's somebody that you can actually get quite a bit of value out of even if you haven't taken him to the lab in practice. In the lower ranks of Dragon Ball FighterZ, simply spamming his quarter circle forward heavy attack is going to see that you get a lot of confirmed combos. And this even honestly works in higher ranks as well. And you learn the inner workings of these things, you can be an absolute powerhouse. I mean, just look at Raptor. Android 16. He's certainly fallen from grace in Season 1, but he still is an extremely powerful character and very scary to go up against. Once again, like Super Broly, he's more so the command grab type of character, but he has access to a little bit more than that, with a pretty good projectile and some far-reaching normal attacks that can really help you out. Cooler's a weird one, man, because he has really good range on a lot of his attacks, but some of his attacks are really slow, especially his projectile. While sure, his down forward heavy attack allows you to go through other people's projectiles, letting you kind of close the gap, you have to hope that your opponent actually throws those out there. So given the fact that the character is a little bit more cumbersome and is a little bit slower than the average, you might find yourself getting punished and just straight up beat out in the lower ranks, especially where everyone's just mashing light attack. If you get caught doing the same, chances are you're gonna lose. Adult Gohan has access to leveling up 7 different times, and with these levels, he ends up gaining new attributes. These new attributes are something more experienced Gohan players are gonna love because it adds a level of depth unmatched by pretty much any character. But for a newer player, you're not gonna be able to tap into that unless you get a sufficient amount of practice with him. Android 17 has some pretty unorthodox moves, and he has access to Rekkas, which newer players tend to struggle with as they haven't yet gotten used to the different options available through the Rekkas. And Videl falls very much into that same category, as she does once again have Rekkas, but she also has a spot dodge mechanic, which is unlike any of the other characters reflect. Not to mention the fact she doesn't really combo quite like other characters do. So that could be a little bit strange for newer players. Android 18 is one of those characters that gets to call in another character in order to actually help her out, much like Videl and Captain Ginyu. And these are really gonna help help her apply the pressure, get her mix-ups, as well as combo. But if you're a newer player and you don't know how to quite link Android 17 into your combos or your pressure, then you're not going to be able to really milk all Android 18 is worth. Now here we got the simple characters. These are characters that are going to give you results, but they still have quite a bit of depth to them if you choose to go ahead and learn them. Jiren, I mean, the guy's got counters for days. If somebody tries to get on the offensive on you, you can easily shut them down with this character. Not to mention the fact he's got your pretty standard tool set. Even though he doesn't have your typical jumping down heavy attack, it's pretty simple to learn how to use that. So you have all the tools necessary with somebody like Jiren. Kid Buu is a absolute monster. I mean, the guy's wild. Definitely opens up the depth once you've actually learned the character, but even just straight out of the box, if you're a new player, you can still get pretty good results out of him. Base Vegeta is much the same way. He really opens up if you know what you're doing, but just out of the box, you'll get yourself a lot of results. Trunks is just a really standard character, and he's really easy to pick up and play. He's got all the tools you'd come to expect. A normal jumping down heavy attack. He's got a ki blast that travels more so like a beam, and he's actually got an actual beam. And he's got some pretty decent normals. Now, Super Baby 2 is actually a weird one. I kind of wanted to place him down here just because for me personally, I find him to be a little bit cumbersome. I don't know what it is about him, but he does have some really easy combos. Like literally 5 minutes in practice mode and you can start doing this guy's corner loops without a problem at all. So that's kind of what tempted me to put him into the simple tier, but I think he might even go in here for some people. Kefla is pretty much the same, where her combos are a little bit different. They are pretty strange, but she has access to really good tools. Notably, her light attacks are absolutely incredible, and I think a newer player who's going to be mashing light attack quite a bit, I mean they do that even in high ranks, you'll see a lot of results just with that alone. GT Goku's got everything you need, man. He's got a beam, he's got a way to get in, but he does have one of those weird jumping down heavy attack. So if you're new to the game and you haven't quite gotten used to that weird jumping down heavy attack, then he might not be your type, but he is pretty easy to use, so I recommend giving him a try. I honestly feel like Blue Vegeta opens up a whole lot once you actually practice the character, but he has all the tools you need in order to just go ahead and have fun with him right out of the box. And that's pretty much the same with Gogeta. Now, Gogeta does have a couple of clunky feeling moves with a little bit of a pause in them, and multi-hitting moves. So you might find yourself dropping a lot of combos at first when you pick him up. But I think that's something that you can get used to relatively quickly, making him more of a simple character. Android 21, definitely a character that opens up once you know what you're doing with her. She's a very technical character, but she also has your really typical moveset, something that anybody can pick up day one and immediately feel comfortable with. Now, here's the easy to pick up and play characters. Once again, in no particular order, these are the characters I think are really easy for anybody who's just picking up the game for the very first time to go ahead and choose these guys and get good results. Yamcha's got some weird normals like his standing heavy attack, for example, which actually moves him backwards and then he lunges forward, but this is all stuff that for a new player, you're gonna feel sick when you go ahead and use this. Your opponent starts mashing light attack and you dodge out of the way and rip them a new one for trying to go on the offensive. Definitely a beginner-friendly character if you ask me. Even though his air options aren't the most kind of like nimble or intuitive, his Wolf Fang Fist cross-ups more than make up for that for a newer player. Gogeta, look, just mash light attack. You'll win. I think you're gonna end up seeing a trend here because Goku Black, same thing, just mash light attack. You'll win. There's nothing else to it for a newer player. And once again, same thing for UI Goku. It's not much different here. Mash light attack, you're gonna win the game. UI Goku plays like your average character. He's got all your average moves and then some with a load of command normals. So really, as long as you know what buttons do what, he's pretty easy to get used to. Not to mention the fact that you're gonna be dishing out an incredible amount of damage for literally no effort at all. Probably one of the easiest characters to use if I had to put him in a specific spot. Super Saiyan Vegeta and Super Saiyan Goku, they were literally made to be easy to use. Enough said. I mean, there's nothing else to say about that. They were made in the base game to kind of introduce new players to fighting games and teach them the standard mechanics of Dragon Ball FighterZ. Vegito, look, I don't think a single person, not even the most avid Vegito main, would argue with me when I say just mash light attack. Literally, the entire roster pretty much loses to you hand over fist when you just mash light attack. Base Goku is really, once again, just a very standard character. He's got all the tools you'd come to expect, and they all work really well together. Tien is about as plain white bread as you can possibly get. Once again, he might as well be here with Super Saiyan Vegeta and Super Saiyan Goku. Krillin's got a couple of unique moves where he can actually go into his after image technique and fake out whether or not he's attacking or backing up, which is pretty cool. He also has a Sensu Bean, which is a little bit more unique, which allows you to kind of regain health, and I think that's something a newer player can actually make a lot of use out of and get away with. Other than that, a lot of his tools are pretty standard, so you'll have a pretty good time with him. Gotenks, I feel like this character just does things and it works. Like, you don't have to know what you're doing. The character is very user-friendly and very intuitive. Goku Blue, he's got a couple of unorthodox moves, like his cross-up elbow or his little teleport move, But these are things that a newer player can have fun with. These are things that a newer player can use and feel really good doing so. He also has a very tricky overhead through his light attack string, which I think a lot of newer players can make good use of. Now, Teen Gohan. Once again, one of those characters I don't think anybody would argue with me when I say just mash light attack. Trust me, you're gonna thank me later if you're newer to the game. This guy wins entire fights mashing light attack. And don't get me wrong, there is a lot of depth to this character as well. There's a lot of depth to many of these characters, but his light attack is really good. Especially if you combine it with like his EX quarter circle forward, you're gonna be doing damage with this thing. Cell, once again, another character with a lot of depth, but his tools are so good that even a brand new player who's never touched Dragon Ball FighterZ before can get some pretty decent results out of him. Z Broly. Z Broly has armor on most of his moves, and this armor is pretty forgiving, so as a newer player, you can make a lot of mistakes. You can mess up on your positioning, you can mess up on your timing, and you can still get away with it because the armor is going to save you time and time again. Fuse Zamasu, I feel like a lot of his tool set really works well together, and they kind of seamlessly flow one into the other. Now, it can get a little bit weird getting used to some of his moves, especially within the flight mechanic, but once you learn your way around his actual tools, he really is pretty easy to use. Bardock, another character who's fallen from grace. Now, this doesn't mean that he's bad. He's certainly a strong and reliable and consistent character, and he's also somebody that newer players can pick up and do really well with. He's got a pretty good light attack, which tends to suck people right into it. He's got great special moves, like his Lariat, which allows you to get into your opponent's face really easily, and that's where Bardock feels most comfortable. He wants to be on top of his opponent at all times. So for a newer player, he's going to be really easy to pick up and actually just overwhelm your opponent during the fight, which oftentimes when you're fighting against other newer players, they're gonna break. They're not gonna be able to handle the pressure, and they're gonna open up. But dudes, this is my difficulty tier list. Let me know what you thought about it in the comments down below, and let me know who you'd place where. Now, if you enjoyed today's video, be sure to go ahead and give it a like. And if you're newer to the content, feel free to subscribe, join this incredible community. I'll catch you guys tomorrow. Thanks for watching.